It's a dark and inky world we live in, my friends, so you better be prepared. Actually, I have no idea what that means. Welcome back to the Mind of Watercolor, everybody. All you minders out there, hope some of you are participating in Inktober. If you don't know anything about Inktober, go to Inktober.com and you'll learn real quick. There's a prompt list there. It's basically a 30-day challenge, although you don't have to do the 30-day challenge, with 30 prompts so that you can do an ink drawing every day during October. Now, at the very minimum, you ought to just go and see what other people are doing. Even if you don't do a lot of pen and ink, there are just some great pen and ink artists out there. Use it hashtag Inktober or hashtag Inktober 2017, you know, like on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, and you'll see what other people are doing. And on the Inktober site itself, Jake Parker will feature some of his favorites. So just a lot of great inspiration to be had. And of course, you know how I feel. Pen and ink is a perfect companion for watercolor, for doing ink and wash, especially sketches on location, or anything else you want to do. Journaling, finished paintings, you name it. But Inktober, tons of fun. So today, this is my first. I'm kind of getting to it late. I don't really participate in the 30-day challenge, you know, an ink drawing a day. I just don't have that kind of time to dedicate to that one thing. I wish I did. And honestly, I don't really follow the prompts. So none of that is as important as you pulling out your pen and ink supplies, trying things, either brushing up on skills that you've used before, or trying new skills, trying new forms of pen and ink. There's just a ton, of great, ink supplies out there, from dip pens to brush pens to fine liners, ballpoint pens. You can go and see what other people are doing, get your inspiration, and try some things yourself. Now today I'm going to show you a process that I've used a lot when I was an illustrator. I still use a lot in doing my own art. It's a more involved step-by-step process. Sometimes I take shortcuts through that, but this would be a good look at my complete process for planning, sketching, and drawing. It kind of has its basis in comic illustration. A lot of the techniques are used there as well, but it works for any kind of pen and ink. What do you think, man? Inktober? Yeah, I know, it's great. That's not what you like October for? Let me guess. Halloween? Yeah, I know. We fill that empty head of yours with candy. Alright, so what I'm going to do is start out with sketching in a non-photo blue pen. It's just a light blue pen. You know, they were called non-photo blue. They kind of got that name from back in the day when, prior to computers, when graphic cameras were used a lot. Graphic cameras would either shoot black, high contrast black or white, and it wouldn't pick up this blue. So, illustrators or designers could sketch or mark up paste ups and any number of things with non-photo blue pencil. And when it was finally shot on a graphics camera, and graphics cameras were even used to shoot printing plates, the non-photo blue wouldn't pick up. This is the pen. It's Icy Comic Draft Blue. Really all this is just a lead holder. It's a standard 2mm lead, like you would use in one of these. This is another non-photo blue lead holder that I have nearby. And this is a Prismacolor non-photo blue. So if you've seen these in the Prismacolor colored pencil line, and it said non-photo blue, now you know why. It's just a light blue. But it was adopted by animators and cartoonists and illustrators as a way to sketch out roughly without dirtying up your paper. And it's a good way to do your preliminary drawing. And I'm going to do this one in 3 stages. Now, I don't always do my illustrations or my pen and ink or my drawings in 3 stages, but and this is a pencil. I'm going to actually use the pencil now over that non-photo blue, and that's stage 2. But once I've worked out the drawing in non-photo blue, I'll then go over it with a pencil, and this is sort of my preliminary ink line. So This is commonly used in comics. In fact, you've got a lot of comics out there that they divide up the tasks. The main artist, sort of the headliner artist, will do the penciling, and they'll usually start with the non-photo blue, or a lot of cartoonists and animators and comic illustrators use red, either red or orange. I've seen yellow being used, anything that's very light. I even have some purple pencils that I used to use. And then once they get their drawing worked out, the penciler, in comics they call him the penciler, would go through and do a tight rendering in pencil, including doing some hatching and shading. And you're going to see me doing that. But here I'm sort of just working out the line, and I'm doing some very preliminary outlines and expression lines. You know, when you're inking and doing pen and ink, less is more. And I'm a fairly realistic painter, as most of you know that subscribe to my channel. And I do fairly detailed pen and ink work. Now, because this is primarily going to be pen and ink, I don't think I'm going to put watercolor wash on this. I'm going to carry most of the tone and shading with ink. So ink, like watercolor, and probably even worse than watercolor, is very unforgiving. So as I've not done a very detailed pen and ink in a while, I'm using the full 3-stage process just to kind of warm up with. I'll speed it up here a little bit for you, and you can see as we get into it that I'm actually starting to add some hatching too, where the shading's going to be. In comics, a penciler would do this so that the inker, who was the final stage and was a different artist, would know what the penciler intended. Now, in reality, if I had been warmed up and practiced, I would probably skip the pencil phase. I'd probably go from the blue right to the ink. So I just continue through this figure, adding shading where I think I want it. It's sort of like using your final drawing as a study, you know. Now this is my Sakura electric eraser. I really like this eraser. I'll put a link down in the description to it. You've probably seen these little battery operated electric erasers. So let me tell you, they're not all created equal. I have purchased a Derwent. I have purchased a Helix. None of them work as well as the Sakura. This Sakura is like twice the price. But in these kind of illustrations, I like them because they can spot erase. And I kind of wanted the hottest highlight area of the line to drop out to nothing. So I was indicating that's for myself by going in and just erasing those spots. And I have a fairly tight and careful pencil now how I want to ink it. So I'm starting out with a 0.1 Pigma micron, and I'm just hitting the areas very lightly that I know will sort of be outlined. I can't stress enough, if it's important in watercolor, it's doubly, triply, or quadruply important in pen and ink. But a really good drawing, I think, is important in doing convincing, detailed and realistic pen and ink work. Just like watercolor, pen and ink is easy to overdo. So I build it up gradually, and again, starting with the lightest lines, and I'm penning in or inking in those lines that I know I want to be in there with little or no shading. But this 3-stage process, in a lot of ways, there's actually 4 stages because I do like a couple different inking stages. It just gives you a chance to continue to look at the resource material, continue to be very familiar with every part of the subject. Pen and ink is about suggestion, and it's becomes an exercise in knowing what to put in and what not to put in. And it's such a temptation to overdo it and just put in all kinds of stuff. And I fight that every time I do pen and ink. This is a reenactment photo that I took in a reenactment area called Camden. Just another one of the many Revolutionary War sites. This is a dip pen, and now I'm going to start using a dip pen because I'm going to start putting in some of the really variegated lines where they go from thin to thick. And this pen, which is a Nico G, no, it's actually this Zebra G, just will get a hair line. But with just a little bit of pressure, I can get a fairly dark line. So I'm going back over a lot of the areas where I want a nice variegated line going from thin to thick. And I'm also starting to do a little bit of hairline hatching and build that up. Anyway, back to the reenactment figure. So I've got a ton of these. I've got several hundred photos like this. And I love the costume, love drawing historical figures, just like I like drawing historical buildings. It's a part of the area I live in, you know. The South was big during the Revolutionary War. We have some Civil War sites, not a lot of them where I am, but most of those are down on the coast. But these people, I think one of the funnest thing about going to these historical reenactments are the people. They're just so great. I mean, they are so dedicated, and they love doing this. I mean, a lot of them love camping out. You know, I go to one sometimes towards Spartanburg, or up north of Spartanburg, called Cowpens. Cowpens was considered one of the turning point battles in the South during the Revolution. But that anniversary where they do the reenactment is always in January. It's really cold most years. Some years it's not. And I mean, they come out and do the whole 9 yards. They do cavalry demonstrations. They'll outfit their tents with hay and sleep, you know, and 20-degree weather. And these guys, they really get into it. But they're just great people to talk to. They love telling you what they know about the history. So I get a lot of good, interesting photos from these events. Now I'm lightening up the pencil since I've done a lot of the hatching and line work with the dip pen. And the pencil being picked up helps me to see the ink more. Now that I have a lot of the ink down, I don't need the pencil guides anymore, so I just want to make sure that's not kind of blobbing up my drawing anymore. You know, I've talked to people about dip pens, and I really love dip pens. It's kind of a messy thing, but dip pens, you've got to have the right nib, and if you don't have a good nib, you're going to be dipping your pen a lot. You shouldn't. If you're dipping your pen like every few seconds, you don't have the right nib. This Zebra G, I mean, you can just see how long I'm inking. I usually go 2 to 3 minutes on a dip, especially if it's a fine line. And you got to break them in. I mean, they come with a little bit of oil, and they're kind of shiny, glossy, so the ink doesn't hold in there real well. So usually I'll take some alcohol to clean them off. I'll run a lighter over it to kind of burn off the oil. Some people use toothpaste to kind of scrub off any residue. All of those, I think, work to some extent. This Zebra G is used a lot by comic artists, manga artists. And it's working great for me here. Again, I can go get a hairline in there, and if I press down just a little, I can add a nice little bold dark spot and get a very expressive line. Starting to smear my drawing a bit where it didn't dry immediately. All of this is that I'm using dries waterproof. So if I wanted to go over it with a wash, a watercolor wash, I could. But I'm not intending to, at least not with this one. The book I'm using is Stillman and Burn Zeta, which is sort of the hot press, extra heavyweight. It's a good one. I don't use it a lot for just watercolor, but it's a good one for pen and wash, I think. And I've kind of designated this one for ink and wash, pen and wash. Now what I'm using is a Pentel Pocket brush pen. And so I'm going through, and now I'm able to tell a little better where I want those dark little shocks of lowlights. Just the darkest little recesses. And just to give it a little contrast and pop. And this is a thing or a stage which is easy to overdo too. So if you're new to pen and ink, just take these steps gradually, and you'll do better probably than if you just kind of pull out your ink pen and start drawing. I don't recommend that for anybody who's kind of new to pen and ink. You know, pen and ink is just using hatching to produce a tone. I mean, your eye just reads it as a form of tone. And so one of the typical challenges is getting it even. And I like to do my hatching either all in one direction or in the direction that follows the form that I'm shading, or a combination of both. So I'm happy, I think, with most of the inking, and some places where it's blobbed or clogged up a little too much and I want to open it up, I'll go back in with white. Now, it doesn't matter how you do this. You can use a waterproof, bleed-proof white if you want. I just use a gel pen because I'm only adding small touches. I'm just trying to separate some lines that I want to be cleaner, or lighten a line by drawing next to it that I thought got a little too dark. A lot of times you can break up a line by hatching through it with white. So it's a good touch-up, final touch pen. You know, I'm not following the Inktober prompts, but I think I did this right around the time that long was the daily prompt, and I'll say this is good for the long prompt. People back in the day, it took them longer to do everything from cooking to sewing clothes, and I don't think I have to tell you why. You know, everything was done by hand. So we'll put this in the long category. And I've already been just thoroughly enjoying looking at Inktober, the stuff that people are doing. And as I said in the intro, it's just really a good time to get out your supplies, get familiar with them, and learn something new. One of the things I want to do during this Inktober is, and I'll probably be posting these on Instagram, is I want to do a series of these figure drawings, these figure studies. And I want to try different materials that I have. I have several brush pens that I've not really done anything more than just fiddle around with. I want to do some more dip pen work. I want to get out my fountain pens and maybe do something with a fountain pen. And I will be doing some pen and wash that will utilize watercolor. So they won't all just be ink like this. white gel pen dries permanently, so you can, once it's thoroughly dry, you can ink back over it. And I just blot every now and then to make sure I'm not smearing any ink that hasn't thoroughly dried. The main thing is to have fun and learn something. You know, don't get frustrated if you don't get it right and you don't do something beautiful. And don't feel pressured to do the 30-day challenge or follow the prompts. Just use Inktober as a time to, hey, you know, I'm going to learn something. I'm going to practice doing something with ink and see what happens. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this. If you got any questions about this process, hey, give me a comment below and we'll see about answering it. And everything I used in this video I will list in the description below. Thanks everyone. Thank you patrons so much. You will probably get some special videos for doing Inktober. Probably some ink and wash, watercolor with ink, and some other stuff. But I'll be posting some stuff exclusively for you guys. And thank you everybody for watching. We'll see you in the next video.